Hi, and thank you, Bella, for that wonderful introduction. One thing I do need to mention is also that I'm married, and we have 4 children, and my wife is here. She's a Rotarian as well. So, and she has put up with me for an awful long time. So, thank you. Yeah, really, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a little bit about how the environment developed and Rotary and how it became an area of focus and what that can do. So having it as an area of focus. A little background, Paul Harris really liked nature. Besides founding Rotary, he was also an outdoorsman, member of outdoorsmen's clubs, and actually met his wife on a prairie club trip. So he's always been involved in there. And Rotary has always been involved in the environment. It may not have been front and center, but it was always doing stuff for it. As the 20th century started to come to a close, climate change actually started to rear its head. People started worrying about it. Well, this really affected past President Paulo Costa, who instituted the Protect Planet Earth program. And this was designed to help mitigate climate change and other environmental problems at the time. And so that was going on from about 1990 to 1994. One of the strengths and weaknesses of Rotary is our rotating leadership, and so that eventually kind of faded away. And it began, again, to receive emphasis with past President Barry Rassin, who developed the tree planting program. We recorded 4.7 million trees planted, and the goal was 1 per Rotarian. But we're sure it went much, much higher than that, just based on the usual thing of trying to get Rotarians to talk about and log in their good deeds that way. We're having to do the manual advancing. So next, please. So this was Paul Acosta, and then next to him. So after Ian Risley, it was our past President Barry Rassin, continued the conversation on the environment, and he had particularly noting that his club and his country are very subject to the effects of climate change with regard to storms and rising seawater. Then came President Mark Maloney, who worked with the Rotary Foundation and with Rotary International to develop the whole and put through the concept of having an environment as another area of focus. Next, please. Holgar Knapp was also continued the conversation, and he really emphasized that climate justice issues are not political. They are justice issues, and they're moral issues. Next slide. Yeah, there we are. And Jacques Armetta continued the program, emphasizing the mangroves, which we will be involved with on this trip. And we have an opportunity to go planting the mangroves. And now Jennifer Jones is, next slide, is working for protection and making as a project for her to protect pollinators, particularly butterflies. Next slide. SRAG was formed about 6 years ago, a little over, with a charge to inspire and empower the Rotary family with expertise, networks, education, and best practices to implement sustainable and impactful environmental projects. And so, as a action group, we have a unique ability to support Rotarians while they are doing their work in sustaining the planet. But how did SRAG really help us get there? Well, we did a couple of different things. One, we were consultants for the Rotary Foundation Environmental Issues Task Force that led to the environment being established as a 7th area of focus. We also had team members that were contributing to the policy statements the Rotary Foundation has for the environment, and that we'll actually go take a look at in a little more depth. I've also attended a number of the Conference of Parties. This is the implementing framework from the Paris Treaty to limit greenhouse gases and climate change. So we had delegates going there. We had delegates going to the next one in Glasgow. Actually, yeah. Another one, please. And another one. We also attended COP26 in Scotland. And Chris, you're going to be leading right from here to go to the next Conference of Parties in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. So we're going to have representation in 3, Rotary and SRAG will have representation in 3 of the last conferences of parties. And that's really significant because here you go and you meet the really important, really high-level attendees, and they can show what Rotary can do. We also have Chris Pellick here is a founding member of SRAG, and a co-founder here is also Karen Kendrick-Hans, right there. So we've just got really an organization of wonderful people. Next slide. And so other things that SRAG has done, we worked with the UN Environmental Program for World Environment Day. This was a booklet that was put out that actually gives really wonderful ideas on what clubs and districts can do for the environment. Just basically a kind of a wish book for projects. Next slide. So what does having the environment as an area of focus do? Well, previously, before it was an area of focus, we did a lot. Rotary did a lot of really cool things for the environment, but there are certain things we could not do, or certain ways we were sort of constrained. So by having an area of focus, it certainly increased the visibility of these projects, and having the environment as an area of focus expanded the scope of what we can do. It also starts generating a separate stream of funding for grants because people can donate directly to that area of focus, and gives us representation specifically for the environment and the Rotary cadre of technical advisors. Next slide. So what does this now allow us to do? The Rotary area of focus, well, it gives us a couple of different things. So here you don't let your eyes glass over when I say this, but you need to really take a close look at the area of focus policy statements for the environment or for any other area that you want to take a look at. It's really interesting in terms of what Rotary will support and what Rotary Foundation will fund. And so what we'll do here is review a few of those areas and just to show you what can be done with the environment. So promoting and restoring land, coastal, marine, and freshwater resources. This would be including things like reforestation, preventing deforestation, all as an upstream activity, preserving biodiversity by protecting and restoring habitats. A lot of people here from the northeast of the U.S. Up there you have Lyme disease. Now why did Lyme disease happen? The disease has been around hundreds of years, and all of a sudden it became epidemic. So what happened? Well, the white-footed mouse is a wonderful host for the ticks and the bacteria that cause Lyme disease. And they can get around very easily. They can exist in small pockets of trees and areas, these little pocket parks that you see right at an intersection or even in housing area where you have a few trees. They had previously been held in check by the predators. So predators such as weasels, foxes, owls, this sort of thing would keep the population of those white-feeted mice down. But when the habitat was starting to be broken up for residential housing or for anything else, then the number of predators really went down. They require a lot larger area to sustain their population in an area, a much larger land area. than the mice do. So the mice basically outgrew the predators that they had available, and then that started spreading to people. And so the reason for the Lyme disease is actually disruption of the local environments, usually caused by development or sometimes by farming. So what the environment as an area of focus allows us to do is to start looking at these things. We can start lobbying with the cities about development to be able to maintain contiguous open areas to be able to reduce the risk of Lyme disease. It's also, this one particular sentence in the policy statements allows us to protect and restore coastal marine and freshwater ecosystems, and we will have a chance to do that working with the mangroves. Next slide. Another area is enhancing the capability of communities and local governments to support natural resource development. And this can involve things such as peace building and conflict prevention, particularly with water resources, sustainable fisheries, promoting the use of traditional and indigenous knowledge in agricultural, land, ocean, and natural resources. Larry Mercuria was an Aleut, one of the inhabitants of the islands up off of Alaska. And he related a story to me where, starting in the 1970s, they noticed that the pellets of the seals and walruses that they had been hunting for many, many, many generations were all of a sudden becoming much thinner. And they actually reported that to the Fish and Wildlife government agency, and they kind of shook their heads and they didn't know what to make of it. But it turns out that was one of the earliest manifestations of climate change, because the waters were warming enough that the animal pellets became much thinner. And so being able to take advantage of native indigenous knowledge is something that is a little bit hard for quantitative scientists, like many of us are, but it's really important. Next slide. And this one. Next slide. Let's go to the next one. Addressing the causes of climate change and climate disruption. This is something very specific that was not something that we could do in the past. And so we can address this by providing access to locally sourced renewable energy. That's things like we have an East Timor Light project with renewable energy, providing clean cooking stove technology that will reduce deforestation, and also sidelight for maternal and child health. It also reduces the death rate of women who cook indoors and the burn rate for children. And another one that's really interesting, supporting the transition to sustainable, energy-efficient transportation modes. Again, can a Rotary Club do that? Well, maybe a little bit, but a big thing is that we are now allowed to advocate to local governments. So we can go in as Rotarians, or as a Rotary Club or district, we can advocate for the adoption of, say, fuel-efficient vehicles, or hybrid or electric vehicles. And so, under the Rotary policies, we can actually impact our governments that way. Strengthening the resilience of ecosystems. Next slide. Resilience of ecosystems and communities affected by climate change. And we have a number of things that we've done, certainly some of the Coastal Habitat Restoration Project, also air pollution monitors. And those have been, Rotary clubs and districts have set those up in a number of places. You think of Bangkok or Manila, where they run a community air quality station, and then they send out texts to the people in the area if it's unsafe for them to go out and do anything. And these are, this is all done, originated and run by Rotarians. Next slide. Supporting education. So what it does, the Rotary Foundation allows us to support environmental education programs in schools, like the Footprint app. That was done, you could have seen that if you attended the Houston RICON, which gives a basic education program outlined for teachers, and also allows us to promote community-based environmental education, awareness, and so there's a program in Kenya called Campus Safaris. One of the things is the kids in the slums of Kenya never see the animals, the iconic animals, the giraffes, the elephants that the country is famous for. And they never will unless somebody takes them there. And so the Campus Safari took kids from the slums of Kibera, Lunga Lunga, and the Nairobi area and actually took them on day trips out to be able to see some of the natural animals that their country is famous for. Next slide. Advocating for sustainable consumption of products. So this would include recycling, composting, upcycling, a number of projects that SRAG has been involved in recently and are still, well, they're ongoing as we kind of push them forward. We're the Freon capture, so barrel Freon. Freon is a hugely potent greenhouse gas, and release of Freon into the atmosphere is many thousand times more potent as a greenhouse gas than CO2. So being able to capture that and have it destroyed safely is important. And also lithium-ion battery recycling for consumer lithium-ion batteries is another program that is being beta worked right now that we hope to be able to bring out across the entire US and later internationally. Next slide. And addressing environmental justice issues and environmental public health. Again, public health, that's a big program. So what can we do for that? Well, it's important. It's a really big problem. Up to usually around 1/2 of the health outcomes that people have, usually considered bad health outcomes, are due to the social determinants of health. And that can include things like income, social protection, education, working conditions, housing, and healthcare access. So by addressing the environmental justice issues, environmental public health, we can affect the health of people across a wide area. And we do that through webinars. It's also, you can address water pollution. We've taken a look at projects in different areas to address the heavy metal pollution in drinking water in different countries. Certainly we have the problem with lead in the Northeast here in the US. And also increasing equitable access to healthy, organic, and nutritious food for vulnerable and marginalized populations. And there's an organization in the Midwest called Get and Grow that plants fruit trees and nut trees and berry groves in places that are underserved, and helps sustain those so you can get not only a benefit from the carbon capture from the trees, but you also are able to provide food for people in food deserts and who have marginal access to good, nutritious food. Next slide. So how do we do it? We do it through action. We inspire clubs, engage with them, and support clubs when they plan their projects in the Rotary area of focus of the environment. Next slide. We do it through growth to be able to increase the influence, basically. And that influence was able to be a significant part in getting the environment adopted as an area of focus. Next slide. And we do it through collaboration. This is a electric charging station that the Northfield, Minnesota Rotary Club was able to get with the local electrical organization. We do it through webinars, through task forces, regional chapters, and they can be in biodiversity, climate change, pollinators, circular economy, tree planting, etc. Also, next slide. We've held pre-conferences in the past. We did not have one this year, didn't have one the year before, but we've had those on an ongoing basis previously. Next slide. We have our regional councils. Those are very active. Big West has, last time was about 350 members. So everybody that joins SRAG gets assigned to a regional, geographically to a regional council, and they can coordinate actions within those groups. And next slide. And we have also a new program called the Climate Ambassadors Program. This is being piloted down in Australia and should be available within the next year to be exported to districts that want to engage in this. It is basically, this program helps Rotarians and Rotaractors bring the environment to their club or district. So, next slide. What can we do? You can join SRAG, certainly. You can support the area of focus financially. Sometimes you have a choice to do that. Next slide. And I think I will entertain any questions. I will be available afterwards. Okay.